So later on, I'll talk more about what we're doing here in Taiwan.
So I think it's better if you ask questions. But basically, International Federation of Medical Students Association, which we call it IFMSA, is the biggest students organization in the world. And we have official partnerships with World Health Organization and UNESCO. And we have 7 standing committees, which are Standing Committee on Public Health, Medical Education, Professional Exchange, Research Exchange, Reproductive Health, including AIDS, and then Refugee and Peace. So it's like medical students who are interested in those topics work in different standing committees. And we have almost 100 national member organizations all over the world.
Continuing with Haihua's organization, Vision Youth Action is a youth organization in Taiwan focusing on engaging Taiwanese young people into public affairs. And we have just started our organization. We ran it as like a volunteer-based organization for like 3 years, and almost 3 years. But last year, we formally organized ourselves and registered and became more organized with like paid staff and everything. And how we started our organization was basically because many people's observation or stereotype about Taiwan's young people. They call our generation like strawberry community, 草莓族. So they think we're very weak and we can't stand any big challenges, or we don't care about the situation around us, or we don't. We're like a more pragmatic and like money or career-oriented group or generation. But we didn't want people to think our generation as that way. So we thought of forming this organization. And how we do it is we're not that focused on political participation, but rather on civic participation. So we form a lot of alliances with a lot of major NGOs or NPOs in Taiwan, and we train these college students or young people from 18 to 35 about like civic education, and we have a lot of workshops, and then we send them into these organizations to intern. And intern in America, it might be like quite common as a choice during university, but it's actually a new choice for young people in Taiwan, whether interning in the industry or interning in NGO or interning in the government sector. And what we focus on is interning in the so-called third sector. And we also have another connection with like 23 NGOs in DC, in Washington, DC. So on the same time, with advanced training, we send young Taiwanese students to DC's organizations. So that's basically how our organization was formed and what we're doing. So we have prepared some questions on the PowerPoint in Chinese related to some topics that we might find interesting, we might be able to discuss with each other. And some of the questions are, I'm not sure how many of you read Chinese. Or you want to do?
But since my language skills aren't so good, I wasn't able to sort of gauge the depth of their understanding of the issues or why they were so enthusiastic. So perhaps maybe you could give us an idea.
Rob, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to echo what Jerome said. Actually, the West wasn't able to see very much of how the youth were interacting with some of the decision making that was happening with the campaign. In the U.S., the campaigns that I've been involved in have had young people tend to have sort of very, very enthusiastic young people, and a lot of times those young people are involved not only at a sort of youth group level or youth corps level, but actually are involved in planning and strategizing of the campaign. And I don't really, it was pretty much only one day that I saw anybody affiliated with any of the campaigns, so I didn't really see any young people involved at those levels, but then I didn't really get to see very much of the campaign anyway, so maybe you can answer.
Water Launch, okay. So that's their youth campaign corps. And we talked with, we had these cooperations with some of them, but not the KMT side. So on my observation, or to their campaign this time, like in the DPP rallies, I thought that those enthusiastic youth are like the basic voters for DPP. So they're like, originally they support DPP. They're not like the middle voters, or like this 1 million voters that are newly voting this year. And as to their campaign, I think in Taiwan, I heard from the Water Launch people that they have to write proposals to the people in the, like Luo Wenjia, who is the director of the department of the youth department of DPP. They have to write proposals, and like they have their own ideas. They organize their ideas and write proposals to the big heads, and then they try to then they approve whether the proposal is workable or not, and if they think the proposal is good, then they let them have the resource to do it. But I heard that most they're often turned down. One of the problem is the website, iParty. I think it's supposed to be a website.
Right. Okay, this is just my observation the past few days. It seems like most of the Taiwanese younger generation know who they're gonna vote for, and however, I have this impression that when I ask, they are vague, if not sure whether or not they're gonna go in on the 20th and actually do the voting, go in, and vote. Do you find that to be true, or I don't know, just your opinion?
Sleep is also related to that. Okay.
Mine is related to the question you asked, or that they asked.
Okay.
You wanna-
How about where we going? Yeah, first of all, 4 of us sitting here, we can't represent all the opinions. Yeah, so ours is also our own subjective observation. So I think to answer your question, I think many of the young people, at least my friends, many of them, like especially if we're like studying in Taipei, but our hometown is back in the south, we sort of hesitate to go back and vote. Like, okay, because it takes I know many people fly from like Brazil to come and vote, but but still, my friends will say, like my friends who are not that enthusiastic and are not that like sort of middle and swinging voters, they will say, okay, if I have time, then I will go, but not that strong. But as the election is approaching, and I think there are more peer pressure, like some of us who are more enthusiastic, we will like ask them, are you going to vote? And then they will have the pressure and they will go.
You know how they divide Taiwanese students into 4 different areas since senior high school. We have the first, second, third, and fourth. And people who around me are all students who study like science or medicine, and who are the group of people who are traditionally considered not that enthusiastic about politics. And in my experience, my classmates, I asked them why they are not that concerned about the election, and they gave me some answers. One of them is, oh, those are not my business, and something that I don't have the power to change, and something it is too chaotic. So yeah, so actually some of them don't really feel like they are voting on anyone, but some of them, I think for Taiwanese students who are enthusiastic about politics are quite enthusiastic, but for the rest of them, they are like, they don't touch it at all. Yeah, and I think that has something to do with the way we are educated. We are educated to be like not too aggressive. I think for us, being aggressive is much worse than being being dependent. I mean, it's like the difference between autonomy culture and the difference and consensus culture. So we don't seem to discuss about the election, the campaign that much, and we don't express our strong opinions that much. But I don't know why so many of my classmates they don't really feel like voting. I've got their answers, but I don't feel quite like that myself. So yeah.
Thanks. Steve, you have something about the first question?
I've been in Hualien for the last 6 months observing students and teaching them. And I've asked a lot of them, throughout the course, especially as it's gotten closer to the elections. And my observations are, these are medical students, are that a lot of them are turned off by the politics, the name calling, the kind of bashing that both parties are doing now. That's one response. The other is sense of they don't see it impacting their daily lives. And I have thoughts about that for these professionalized students. And the third is just a sense that if they bring up these issues amongst their classmates, it can create divisions, and almost a sense that in having discourse on this, they can't be friends, or it can raise a lot of divisions between family and each other. So those are the three kind of things I've encountered over my 6 months looking at Taiwanese students.
Do you want to respond to that? Or, and if not,
Yeah, I think it's a very good general conclusion of why many Taiwanese young people don't care to vote.
before I do that, I think want to jump on, unless it's related to the exchange, I want to jump on that. I think you guys mentioned the sense of not wanting to be political and something that Stephen observed. I just want people in the audience to talk about, some of ours were, very active in going to school in town politics or Asian American politics or whatnot. And do you encounter the same thing in the United States, or can you just share your experience working? And I knew some of you organized ITASA this year, so what's your experience interacting with fellow students on at the Taiwanese affair, or just politics in general? Rob, answer that.
Well, it's been a long time since I was in school, but
Not that.
let me spend a few minutes to try to recall. But anyway, I wanted to first. I think it was really exciting to be here because we met some of the first-time voters, and it dawns on my mind that these people are the first people in Taiwan to actually grow up with the concept of voting. Previous generations, even the first-time voters from the last election, they had been in Taiwan when there was a period of time when nobody was voting for anything, right? In the U.S., my experience as a student, I always voted. Even I started voting when I was 17, even though I wasn't supposed to.
How did you do that?
I'd always been involved in political activity, and what I found was very interesting was I worked with a lot of students that were very heavily politically involved, but they did the same thing that some of the students that you pointed out did, and they didn't go home and vote, didn't apply for absentee ballots, and it's a little bit of a contradiction, but they were very, very heavily involved in some kind of political activity on campus, but yet did not offer up their vote when time came. And for whatever reasons that were political disillusionment because of the infighting, or maybe they didn't understand the issues, or maybe they just didn't feel like it was relevant for them to vote in an election that was 600 miles away or 2,000 miles away. But I think there's some of the same problems.
Yeah, you want something to add to that?
Yeah, I would generally agree. Actually, I think that there's a lot of apathy in the United States too, and I think I knew people from both sides. People like Rob who were very energetic to vote from the very beginning. And I knew a lot of people who just really didn't care and wanted to stay out of it, or just, I mean, the barriers to voting in the United States are much lower. You don't have to go home to vote. Okay, you can vote on wherever you're going to school. Okay, and yet we have a similar level of apathy in students that are not registering to vote because they just, don't really care. Why is that? I mean, I don't really know. I do think that probably there does seem to be a lot more political interest and energy, I think, in Taiwan, and there may be a proportionate amount among the youth. That's probably just because this is an exciting, growing time for Taiwan, and the States has been pretty much the same as it's been for a long time. So.
I just want to do a quick survey. How many? I assume most of you has U.S. citizenship and can vote. So how many of you voted in last November? And how many of you, even though you can vote, but didn't vote? You can vote but didn't vote. And this is, I just say this is a pretty skewed sample. And does anybody know what the ratio? I mean, we know the voter turnout in the last November, 30%. But does anybody have the statistics on the college-age students voter turnout?
I think it's lower than that. I think it's like 17 or
So it's about half. So and whereas Taiwan's last election 2010, the voter turnout.
That's what I was trying to find out. I found out America's, since 1972 to 2000, the rate of the turnout in presidential election of age 18 and 24. But I had a problem finding out the statistics in Taiwan. I only had the number of it was 69.8 of the general of all the general voters, but I wasn't able to find the age group, only by region but not by age. So I'm not able to answer that question.
Well, I think Melissa had and then Jessica.
Well, I want to say that in response to Perry, I think that I just like Perry and Rob, that I've encountered people who are very interested in politics and people who aren't interested in politics because, I mean, similarly because they might not think it will affect or change their daily lives very much. But I think that in the U.S., a lot of times people don't think that their vote will matter as much because it's not a direct election. So, for instance, I went to school in Rhode Island, which is always voting Democrat. So, no matter what, so each individual student doesn't feel like their vote makes very much of a difference because the state historically goes to Democrats. And most kids are Democrats there anyway. But so, I think in the U.S. that may make sense. So maybe you care more about, I'm not sure about this, but I would just hypothesize that you might care more about voting in a swing state like Florida than you would in a historically Democratic or Republican state like Rhode Island or somewhere else. But that since that's not the case in Taiwan, it's too bad that more people don't think that their vote matters because it actually does directly matter.
Do you guys understand the concept of electoral college in the U.S., like how that works?
No, I don't.
Okay, can somebody explain that just to Melissa's, Rob, just real quick.
I've also got a question, so I'll just go right into my question if that's okay.
Yeah, but I think I call on Jessica
Oh,
after that.
okay,
So
well,
if you wanna explain that, and then let Jessica go, and then we'll go back to you. Victoria, you had a question.
the electoral college is what actually elects the president. So the direct popular vote is an indication of who might win the presidency, but every year, and this is the time around now, you hear about the delegates being chosen for each state. And an electoral college is the total number of House of Representatives members and as well and the senators added together. And each state gets a portion of that, and you basically win a state. If you win a state, you get all of the votes on that electoral college. And those 538 people are what actually elects the president of the United States.
Right.
The electoral college is that voting has always reflected the popular vote, except in two times. I forget the first time, and the second time was just the last round of elections.
It was Kennedy. Kennedy was elected, I believe, with less popular vote than Nixon, but won on the electoral college.
So basically, if you win California, you win all the votes for California.
Yeah.
If you win Washington, so forth, and you just add up all those points.
Okay. We're gonna jump to Jessica's question. No, oh, comment.
Just really random comment, but I can see why there's a proportionate amount of apathy between the United States and Taiwan, because just from my perspective, that like the issues such as Social Security and like Medicare and all this stuff, it doesn't really pertain to the quote young people yet, and so that's why I understand why. I mean, it will eventually, but the term is only 4 years, and so that's why I just see.
And as Pakistan, you don't pay taxes.
Right, exactly.
Sorry, Victoria, and then Jerome, and then I think Jean. Huh? Oh, Rob, you had a question. Sorry. Go ahead. Rob, and then Victoria, Jerome, and Jean.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a lot of student apathy, probably because students don't think the issues affect them. And in Taiwan, I think there's really only two issues. Do you want to call yourself Taiwanese and go for independence, or do you want to call yourself Chinese? You want to live in like an archaic, old-fashioned ideal, you know? I mean, that's my... All right. Anyway, I think those are really the only issues in Taiwan when it comes to the presidential election, and that's how scholars in the United States actually view the presidential election here as well. They don't care about the referendum, except insofar as the referendum impacts President Chen's popularity and endorsement by the people. If he wins the presidency and does not win the referendum, then that is a very strong message that the people are sending him. Also because, from what I understand, if you are an overseas Taiwanese coming back to vote, you cannot vote for the referendum. So all those votes are eliminated right away. That's one major difference that I see is that there are a lot of issues that are debated in the United States in the political system, not only on the national level, but also even local level. And there's a stark contrast between who will turn out to vote on national policy as opposed to who will go to their local election to vote for their city council or mayor or something. It's usually people will vote on a national level, but not the local level, even though the local level affects them very directly in contrast. The other thing is that even though some people, maybe like Rob, they have always been very politically active and aware, a lot of that might be his upbringing and who he's been integrated with. And even as a poor student, he was out, getting votes and doing the vote himself. But really, once you get to a certain point in your life where you realize, like, all this money is coming out of your pay, like your vote is the only way to ever exercise where those dollars go and how it's used, more and more people actually become, more willing to get out there and vote. So.
Very clear where you stand. I mean, you either support him or you don't. And that's why the Dean campaign garnered so much youth support. I think it's because the issue was so simple.
Reply to two of you guys about the issues that don't. First, to your question, I think many viewpoints from the outside, they view this election as like the choice of national identity. But I think many of my friends, they don't view the election this way. National identity, it's they sort of want to avoid it, or they think that keeping the status quo is easier. So they care more about like the economic policy, or like whether I can make a better living or not. But then we thought about okay, so if I don't look at the policy of about national identity, maybe we should take a look at youth policy, which is like closer to our identity. So we made like a simple a simple comparison of the youth policy of the two parties, from DPP and from the Pan Blue, and we call it beef, like ro, what the candidates want to give us, what beef they offer, and according to what we have found, they think that the younger generation in Taiwan care most about the following issues, including like education, foreign studies. So they offer a lot of loan or a lot of scholarship for people to study in Taiwan and study abroad. And also they think that young people care about job opportunities. So these are, and also youth entrepreneurs. So that's what they have offered us. And also in DPP's youth policy, they try to view it as a life cycle of a young people. So after like graduation and you work and then you form family. So I think DPP puts its welfare policy into this youth policy as well. And then they have youth leisure, youth public participation, and also the debating military service. I will not go into that, but I was just wondering, like many young people before they vote, they might not even know that such policy exists. And although many of the policy results will deeply relate to our lives, we won't know about it.
People around me who are really crazy about elections, who always talk about, oh, the blue is bad or something like that, are all people aged from like 30 something to 50 something or even 60 something. And I think one of the reasons that young people don't care as much as they do is because from our life experience, we didn't really experience anything that makes us feel like politics concerns everyone. But for example, my mom, she always talks, I don't think she knows everything about the policy, but she always talked about when she was a child, Song Chu-yu was trying to stop Taiwanese people from speaking in Taiwanese, and he had some kind of policy on. Do you know about 歌仔戏 and 布袋戏? Yeah, he was avoiding 歌仔戏 and 布袋戏 in Taiwanese. So my mom cares a lot about that. So I think that's the main reason she's so enthusiastic about voting and buying things from him. The 那个选举纪念品. Yeah. So, but for people around me who are younger, for myself, I haven't experienced anything like that. I don't really feel like 国民党 or 民进党wins the election will affect me that much. So I think it has something to do with our life experiences.
Sorry, did I call on Jean?
Oh, I was answered, yeah.
I just want to add something really interesting because, and I want to get your reaction on this. First is, when we talked with Dr. Ho earlier, who was our first speaker, he talked about there is this middle voters that nobody can identify, and I think we are meeting some of them for the first time. These are people where national identity is not a big issue. They actually look at policy, and in fact, we talk about the DPP and the Pan Blue camp both have similar policy outside of national identity. And I was just wondering, like, from your reaction, are you seeing a pattern, or is this, I mean, when you interact with people, are these? I just find it interesting that national identity is not a big, part in this election for people your age.
Antonio, do you want to talk about national identity?
I mean, I guess my question is.
I find it quite. I'm sorry. Do you want to make?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was wondering. It's like, do you have? I mean, I know some of the young people, have a strong national identity issue in this election, but is your experience that most people like it's not, we're not Taiwanese or Chinese and Taiwanese or Chinese. It doesn't, that's not the main issue. I care about something else.
Yeah, I think many of my friends who don't make the distinguish, it's often one reason is I think they mix the the issue of national identity with the clash between different ethnic groups, like 族群圣迹情节, the complex of like 外省人跟本省人. So they want to avoid that issue, and they also simultaneously avoid the issue of identity. But I think so it makes the issues together, and they think that if we talk about that among our friends, then we're going to cause some separation, or the atmosphere of that conversation is going to be very lousy. So we avoid that issue, like a taboo. And as to the other part of it's the like if you see the recent polls like Chinese, are you a Chinese and are you a Taiwanese, or are you both? That kind of question. It's I think cultural Chinese or political Chinese. This kind of distinguish is not made clear as well, and especially my generation. I think all of us are still using like the old textbook. We haven't we haven't went through the we are not the ones who were after the education reform. So we still use those textbooks, and we had to sing the national anthem in the morning, and with all those ceremonies about Republic of China. That idea is still like rooted in our mind to some extent. And it wasn't until like university that we had to go back and think about it. So
I have been attending international conferences a lot, and one interesting about that is it will be inevitable when you attend an international conference that people will come to ask you, oh, so what's the relationship between Taiwan and China? Are you Taiwanese or are you Chinese? It's like we don't talk about that much in Taiwan, but when our delegates go abroad, everybody asks the same question. So there was one time I argued with my delegate. I mean, someone asked us, and we just started to argue because I said, oh, I'm Taiwanese. Taiwan is an independent country, and the other student just didn't agree with that. But that was my only experience to find someone who disagreed with me. I think most people around me, most of them think that we are Taiwanese people, since most of us were born here, grew up here, and most of us haven't been to China at all. And I think very few people would like to become a part of China because their international image isn't that good. I don't think so, from my point of view. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks. I think who were raising? Jessica, you had a question, or okay? Simon and then Rob.
Well, my question is about the 228 rally. This question goes to all four of you. Do you see a great turnout among the younger generation, young Taiwanese? And also, if possible, if I can add, do any of you join the rally, 228, the hand-in-hand rally? Thanks.
I was in Venezuela, so but a lot of people I know came.
Yeah, I think three of us also joined. Yeah, I think most of the people we know joined together, or like we went back to our hometown and joined the rally.
So are these people that I know you talking about a lot of your friends don't care about politics, not voting. Are those the same people who actually show up to the rally, but just
No.
Those they didn't join the rally.
Rob, you had a question.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit different topic. I was wondering, would you support an initiative that would create an absentee ballot process in Taiwan? And how would you guys go about doing it? I mean, traditionally, an absentee voter ballot is for elderly and disabled people who can't get to the poll sites. But in recent years in the U.S., it's been used a lot for students and traveling professionals that aren't able to attend the poll sites.
Did you guys know how absentee ballots work in the U.S. or?
No.
Okay.
Sorry,
Can can you just tell them like you mail them, you go on internet, how does that work roughly?
So an absentee ballot means you can vote. Instead of going back to your home, you can vote from wherever you are. And whatever the process turns out to be, whether it's internet voting or somebody mails you a ballot.
So how it works in California is that when you register to vote, you can check, you want to be an absentee voter. That means you don't have to show up to the polling place to actually vote. Like, I'm a permanent absentee ballot voter just because by the time I get off work, the polling places are usually closed. But they give you they send it in the mail and you vote and then you seal it and you'll send it back in the envelope. So it's by mail right now in most states. So do you see something like that?
When they made this design, what was the impact? Did it really increase the voting percentage of this certain community that they aimed for?
I think this absentee has been around for quite a while, like before we were able to vote. So we really don't know what the changes were. We could look back and study, how that has impacted the stuff, but we're not sure. Unless any of you guys know whether or not have anybody done study in how creation of absentee ballot in the U.S. increased or changed voting behavior.
Yeah, I believe the absentee process started with the Voting Rights Act. Voting was extended to cover lots of different people over the years, and there was a Voting Rights Act that stipulated some things like ballots have to be in different languages and access has to be provided. So that's really the start of absentee ballots. It's been around for most states, it's been around about 40 years. Some states have had it a lot longer, and not all the states are the same. In California, all you have to do is, hey, I want an absentee ballot. In New York State, you actually have to give a good reason. And if you could perjure yourself by saying, a reason that's not true. So different states have different requirements for absentee ballots.
I think you wanna. I'm just gonna let you guys answer. What do you think about doing something similar in Taiwan? And then I'll get to Victoria.
I was just wondering because we did mention that some people didn't want to go back to their hometown to vote because they have to take the transportation. But I think that's not the issue. If they basically they don't believe that they have the power to change by voting, then no matter how convenient the system is, they won't go and vote. Yeah. And also I think maybe like in Taiwan it's small. And you go back and vote and go back to have a gathering with your family. I think that's nice. So I don't know if the design will be implemented or designed in the future.
Sorry. Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the rest of the group? Since not a lot of us have met you yet, so just really quick who you are.
Sure. I just randomly walked in by accident. No, my name is Bobby, and I know a few people here. I just decided to come and join just to check things out. Just wanted to add something about the absentee ballots in the States. It tends to favor Republicans because most of the people that vote overseas is for military personnel. So in case you guys were wondering, it typically tips Republican. In terms of Taiwan, I'd imagine it'd be 50-50 because it'd be really difficult if you would allow people outside of the Taiwan area to participate in absentee voting. If it's absentee voting for the businessmen in China, at first glance, it might seem like it's going to tip for the KMT. But if it's just within Taiwan, it might slightly tip towards the DPP because most people move out of the rural areas into the bigger cities like Taipei and so forth. It's not very typical for Taipei people to vote to move to rural areas, and Taipei voters typically support the blues, while the rural areas typically support the greens.
All right. Melissa?
Well, we were talking to someone earlier about, I forget who it was, about absentee voting and that, I forget which speaker it was, but they said that it was fairly easy to change where you can vote, so that maybe if you're a student and you are no longer near your hometown, it should be fairly easy to change that to vote maybe in Taipei instead of your hometown. And just wondering what you think about that, and if anyone does that or knows about that.
对啊，他是把户籍换掉。
他跟我们说你如果搬到台北，就户籍换台北就可以这样。可是你学生。
可是我们不会。
We don't. How do you say 户籍in English?
Residency.
Residency. Yeah, we don't change residency that common. I think like many people, even if they go abroad for studies, they don't change their residency, like they're moving out. And we don't do those changes that regularly.
Is it how hard is it to change your like residency huji, or is it?
It's not hard.
Or is it just not done because like you don't want your parents to think you're like leaving?
Yeah.
I think I want to get to some of the other questions. One thing I just noted that both, I don't know if how many of you guys can read that because it's probably kind of too small, but both parties has made the pledge that they want to decrease the voting age to 18 and over. What do you guys think about that? I mean, because that is the voting age in the United States.
And actually, yeah, before going into that question, I have to make like a distinction. Like in DPP, it says very clearly that it encourages people more than 18 years old to vote, to have the right to vote, and how they look around like all over the world. How many countries, like 93 or 92% of the countries' voting ages are all 18, and there are only 6 countries in the world that have the voting age of 20. But interestingly, in Pan Blue's youth policy, they say 18 years old, but it's not the right to vote, but the right to be elected. So it's 选举权, not 投票权. So I don't know if they like made a mistake or they intend to like it to be so, because it doesn't.
So you can be elected, but you can't vote.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just so that doesn't make sense to me. But maybe because of like our voting age is still 20, and so like they don't pay a lot of attention, or I don't think they do a lot of work on their youth policy because there's no vote.
I wondered if there are any questions on that particular issue. We should raise that because I want to move down to another topic that they raised in their handout earlier, which is how does I know most of us are active in Taiwanese American communities, in the U.S. and we have a particular view of what where Taiwan is, or where Taiwan should be, and our own view of Taiwanese issue, and they want to know what is it, how do we view Taiwan, and want to compare how they see Taiwan in terms of where Taiwan's future is. So if you guys want to talk about the U.S. point of view, how does Taiwanese American view Taiwan?
Majority of Taiwanese Americans are very green, and it's, I mean, seriously, because a lot of it has to do with the fact that the United States is like the beacon of democracy, and that some of the injustices that are endemic in modern Taiwanese history are things that in the U.S. would have been corrected or addressed. However, it's not necessarily something that the Taiwanese people themselves want to necessarily correct or address. I think someone raised a question in Kaohsiung, like as to whether any people who had taken part in crimes during 228 massacre have been brought to trial or indicted or even accused. And the basic answer was no, the Taiwanese people would rather forgive them and move on to like a healthier future. Not necessarily forget about this part of Taiwanese history, but also not to take the further steps to drag it out, per se, maybe. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but that was kind of like the policy and the explanation for what the national sentiment is towards some of these things. However, from a very United States selfish almost viewpoint. You know, many people in the United States thinks that injustices have to be righted. They should be corrected, and there's historical precedent for that in the United States, such as the reparations for Japanese who were interned during the war. Not to say that all things in the United States are made. Not everything can be, you know, reconciled in the United States either. But that's a very United States type of thinking. So I think that most of the Taiwanese population that's active in the United States are very green because they support the idea of people being allowed certain types of freedoms. And whether or not the people of Taiwan want to push for independence or any other types of rights, they should at least be allowed to exercise those rights. And I have heard from other Taiwanese activists in the United States too that that's something that the people of Taiwan should at least have the right to choose to do, and not necessarily something that the U.S. should impose upon them or lobby one way or the other. So in other words, for Bush to say, you know, don't go for referendum, or don't do this, don't do that, or even for overseas Taiwanese to return to Taiwan with the right to vote, even though they do not live in Taiwan, they do not pay taxes in Taiwan, they might not even own property in Taiwan anymore. But just because they can have an official domiciliary and register and then have the right to vote seems a little bit overstepping, you know, and again, kind of self-centered thinking. In the United States, people are usually like that. We kind of think that we're always the right ones, you know, and Bush is a classic example of how, you know, you mess with me, you send me terrorist stuff, I'm going to come and, like, you know, take over your country and make up reasons for why I'm doing this. I mean, we are still the cowboys of the world, the United States, and so that's very classic behavior for, I think, the way the United States society is. But I think that there's the more international sentiment about the Taiwan issue and electoral election process is almost, I mean, I think it's very different if you're looking from Asian country perspective as opposed to like European locations or South American or other nations that don't have as much direct interaction with Taiwan. So, for example, I mean, people in Japan, people in China for sure, people in Singapore and Hong Kong, they're talking about the upcoming elections in Taiwan. It's definitely in their newspapers and their media. It's not going to get the same kind of coverage in Spain when they're dealing with terrorism. So that's, you know, the question just really changes depending on which country you're coming from.
Okay. I know this is one issue that I want to add, that you guys see various different perspectives. So I hope that many of you can just speak a little bit about your experience, but try to keep your I can build on what Victoria has said, but just keep it short. So let's see. Let me do this. Perry, Bobby, and then at a time, and then we'll get Deanne, and then I can keep track. So
I agree with Victoria. I think about this. I was just going to add a little bit more about this. I think there's definitely a selection. I mean, the people who migrate to the United States sort of have a different kind of perspective. I think it's also important to realize that the more interaction you have with people from China, the more you realize that Taiwanese people are different from Chinese people. And the students that come from Taiwan definitely realize that they say, you know, we are nothing like the people from China. Their thinking is very different. And that really plays a very significant factor, I think, in molding the way people think when you do that. Although I also have to throw in one little caveat, and that is that people who grew up in the United States, Taiwanese Americans, actually grew up with the same kind of parents that you guys grew up with, and that there's sort of this undercurrent of you know be careful about politics, and then so a lot of people, even if they have opinions, will sort of avoid talking about it. And you know, we are dealing here today with a fairly select group, and I know a lot of people who may be green down deep inside, but you know, have green-like beliefs, but actually, you know, not want to talk about it, or just say, well, you know, it doesn't really matter, or you know, not want to get involved in these kinds of discussions. So that's all I had to say about that.
I think it's really difficult to define. Well, first of all, you have to define what's Taiwanese American. A lot of people may be actually from Taiwan who were the post-1949 people, and they identify themselves as Chinese Americans. So we can't really just make the assumption that just because you're Taiwanese American, you support usually a lot of people might say, yeah, most Taiwanese Americans support the pan-green side, but that's usually because the people that have the pan-green cause have something to fight for, have something that's not there. I'm sorry.
And that's why they call themselves Taiwanese American,
right?
By saying that you already.
Well, everybody. Well, the thing is, when the international media refers to basically everybody in Taiwan as Taiwanese, to be able to differentiate from people from China. So if you have the post 1949 immigrants that are in America, would you automatically label them as Taiwanese Americans, or would you give them a choice? So it becomes very questionable. But I'm just saying that if you're talking about people that actually immigrated to the United States or are from Taiwan, it's not necessary that everybody supports the pan-green cause. It's just that the pan-green cause has some. The Taiwan Republic doesn't exist, so there's something to support. But the pan-blues, you really don't see them in American society because the Republic of China already exists, so there's nothing to really fight for.
Also, it's kind of hard to just say pan-green means pro-independence and pan-blue doesn't, because we don't actually know where the KMT is going nowadays. But in America, at least, we associate KMT with like the old government, and that's usually why people end up supporting DPP, even though we don't know what they're really doing. We just know like one basic issue, and that is kind of a problem, and I think we should become more aware of it in America.
I just wanted to comment on what Bobby was saying about Taiwanese Americans and necessarily being all pan-green, at least in the community I'm in New York. For example, in 2000, when we had Taiwan had presidential elections, at the Lunar New Year parade, you had Chen Shui-bian supporters, you had Kuomintang supporters, you had Xinjiang supporters. They were all there. So America's viewing, this community parade, and they're seeing, like, what is this? So it's not as pan-green if you're talking about people who are coming from Taiwan and also from the American perspective.
Just add really quick. In San Francisco, there are a lot of Huaqiang, the overseas Chinese, and the interesting thing about San Francisco, they came over all in different areas, different time, and there are a lot of Chinese Americans who came over prior to the communists around that time, and they were all looked at the Huaqiang, and I think with Victoria had the experience when you go to the double 10 celebration, and the National Day for Republic of China, and one of the guest speakers was just busting out in Cantonese, and that's part of the I don't know what you call that, but that's part of the I guess the overseas Chinese Taiwanese community. So it's an interesting mix as well. But I think I want to get the perspective of the Taiwanese-born Taiwanese. What do you guys see? Where do you guys see about Taiwan, and in terms of what you're doing? Because what you do is trying to get Taiwanese youth to be involved in the public policy affairs of Taiwan. But what are some of the issues you're pushing for? What are some issues that you care about? Where do you see Taiwan's going? 每个人都讲。
Okay, so what is Taiwan like to me? When I try to describe my home country to foreigners, I often say that Taiwan has a quite mixed culture. Comparing to the state, you may not think so, but comparing to a lot other countries like Japan, China, or some European countries, Taiwan has a quite mixed culture. And I feel like so because I know a lot of Japanese people, Chinese people, European people, and when I deal with Chinese people, I feel very different from them. I feel like I'm more Western and more Japanese. But when I actually get along with Japanese people, it's so obvious that I'm different from them also. But I find so many things in common with Japanese people. Can you understand that? So that's why I think actually Taiwanese people generally have a quite mixed culture. But it doesn't matter that whether I'm too Japanese, too Chinese, or too Western. It doesn't matter. I just feel like I'm Taiwanese and I love my home country a lot, and I'm quite proud of it. there is a lot of room to improve, including, for example, when I was in senior high school, I was quite crazy about the gender equality issue, but it's apparently getting better and better now. And there are some like environmental friendly issues which are not working that well. I don't feel like so in Taiwan. I mean there are many issues to be worked out, but it doesn't matter because this is my home country, and I think we should just to be very committed and concerned to try to change things that we think are not good enough.
He's going to speak in Chinese, and I'll try to do my best to simultaneously translate to English. So if you can give me你如果讲2-3句，稍微停一下，
我觉得现在在台湾是因为
I feel that in Taiwan.
因为
I thought we're doing simultaneous. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
So I speak Mandarin better or wanna讲台湾话？讲台湾。我是感觉，即摆伫台湾information 伤过侪 information 或者是 student， 或者学生吼，因无思考的空间吼，嘛无人教遮个大学生，尤其是大学生，嘛无人教遮个大学生安怎去思考因即摆的问题啊。
I think there is an information overload currently in Taiwan, and there's not enough room for deep reflection in Taiwanese student, and also nobody has been able to teach Taiwanese people, how to process and how to reflect on all these information.
尤其佮加上即摆伫台湾伫政治方面，因逐工若拍开电视看到拢是阮国会逐工咧相拍咧相的。
And sometimes, when we look at politics, things that we see in the media are fighting in the legislative yuan.
我想这是最重要一点，就是讲因家己袂晓去思考，而且看到拢是较 negative 的一面，所以讲会造成即摆尤其是台湾的大学生，因对家己根本就拢无信心。
And because they don't have the time to think about it, and all they saw on media are the bad things about it, the bad side of politics, and that's why they don't have faith in themselves and to make political decisions.
所以这个变成讲，偏偏是最好的朋友，偏偏是最好的 classmates， 但是因面对面，当讲到政治的时阵，伊就 close their mouth.
So even though you're good friends or you're very close classmates, when you talk about politics, you're silent. You don't talk about it.
所以我认为讲，即摆伫台湾的大学生，因根本就都无去大部分，毋是全部，因无去思考着讲，因面对台湾，面对因家己要爱的物件，因到底是要爱啥物？所以讲，即摆的社会互因伤侪 information， 因无法度去思考。
And that's the way the Taiwanese young people feel like they are not even sure what they want, and they don't know how to deal with this information overflow.
I want to add some more important messages. Because getting involved in students' organization a lot in the past 5 years. So actually, I have think about how Taiwanese people, especially young people, should be or how we are like. Because it's like the more international participation I take part in, the more reflection I do. I mean, after attending my first international conference, I didn't really think about how to introduce my home, whether it is a country or not, to others. And I've come to some conclusions. One is that since I was like a child, there's a very popular sentence that when Chinese people saliva, how do you say that? You know, split the saliva, to Taiwanese people, and Taiwanese people can get drowned. You understand? Because they think there are too many Chinese people. So even when they just do simple things like split, there will be too much saliva, so Taiwanese people will get drowned. It's like a very popular sentence in my childhood. Everybody says so, and
but after like this year, I took some courses, and then I realized that actually concerning territory, Taiwan still beats 1/3 of the countries in the world. And concerning population, Taiwan Taiwan beats like more than a half countries in the world. So Taiwan is not a small island or country at all in some perspectives. But comparing to China or the States, of course it is small. But why do you need to compare with those two countries? But sentences like what I just said influences us a lot. I think so. It's like when you were just a child, you heard a lot of things like that. So I think young Taiwanese people should be more confident and should be more open-minded and should be more independent and more critical. I don't know whether it is a good word or not, but more critical. It has something to do with Jianbing just said. It's like to think independently, more, and then and like one thing important is to dream more, to dream about the future. Not only the future of yourself, but the future of like everyone around you. How you would like the world to be, how you would like Taiwan to be. To dream more, I think it's very important. I found very few people around me dream about something idealistically.
我用台湾来讲好啊。其实，伫台湾讲政治的时阵，翁仔某会冤家，查某朋友嘛会冤家。
When you talk about politics, you sometimes create fights between husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend.
像我甲我的女朋友若讲到政治的代志，为当阮两个嘛会冤家啊。
So oftentimes when I try to talk about politics with my girlfriend, we often get into fights.
所以其实毋是讲台湾的少年囡仔无关心政治。
So it's not that Taiwanese the young people in Taiwan do not care about politics.
因为伫即2年伫台湾的社会有一个转变，就是讲，大家拢希望讲台湾的少年会当做较侪代志。
Because there is a change in the Taiwanese, in the feeling in the Taiwanese society they believe that the young people in Taiwan should do more for Taiwan.
但佮伫过去阮教育这过程啊，阮无去用教讲安怎去思考去做家己，去找到家己的一个 position.
And one of the problems is that in our educational system we weren't taught how to think independently for ourselves and how to figure our own opinions or our own position on issues.
所以我感觉伫即摆即个时间点，台湾的少年人其实是伫一个足尴尬的一个所在。
So it is a very tricky position for Taiwanese young people at this point in time.
因为一边是希望讲，感觉恁会当去做一寡代志，抑无对台湾的少年讲，阮毋知影怎要去做这代志。
There's a lot of expectation that we should do more, but at the same time we were not sure how we can do more.
这是为虾米讲伫恁咧选举的时阵，恁看袂到足侪少年囡仔会伫这选举内底出现的一个。
And that's maybe one of the reasons that you did not get to see too many young people in the election process.
因故伫对阮即摆阮讲一个6年级。
You born in 70.
Yeah, I got that.
像即摆对阮来讲，对阮即个年纪的遮少年囡仔，阮关心台湾政治的方式是甲较早是较无相像的。
And for those of us who were born in the 70s, they call them 6th graders. It's the way that we care for and the way we address issues in Taiwan are a little bit different from our previous generations.
较早有伫阮顶一代我少年囡仔，因为去参加一寡社会运动。
A lot of the students, like a generation ago, or 10 years ago, who were born 10 years ahead of us, a lot of them get into student movements and social movements.
因故即摆阮袂去参加即种运动，因为即种对阮来讲是较无适合阮的 style.
And it doesn't quite fit the style of my generation of kids that are born in the 70s.
但是即摆台湾少年仔因会去参加足侪民间的遮 foundation 还是 association 去做一寡 volunteer 的代志。
But the more of us, in our generation, are more interested in becoming volunteer in private, non-profit foundations.
这个过程是会当互因去 了解讲台湾社会出啥物问题，互因去开始去学讲要安怎关心即个社会。
And that's a good way for them to understand, what are some of the social problems facing Taiwan and what they can do to address them.
所以对我来讲，无啥物台湾甲中国的问题，因为你若去做这代志时，你就知影你爱的是台湾。
And so for me, the national identity issue really is not, Taiwan versus China, because when you actually go in and help the people in Taiwan through this organization, you realize what you really love is the land of Taiwan.
这是阮看到的另外一群少年囡仔为台湾咧做的代志。
And that's what we see another group of the Taiwanese young people. That's what they're doing for Taiwan.
所以你讲，我是一个较政治敏感的，我袂去参加啥物选举的活动。
So, for example, even though I'm a little bit apolitical,
因故我会去用，譬如讲选举时，我会直接倒去投票，嘛会去影响我一寡厝的人，会去做人去投票，不管你要投啥，这拢是 OK 的。
So for me, when I get involved in election time, I just exercise my vote and I ask the people to go out and vote. And who they vote for, it doesn't matter to me as long as they vote.
因为至少大家为这个动作开始的时候，会开始去思考讲，咱要的台湾是安怎，是啥物的台湾。
Because that at least get them starts thinking about what's the future of Taiwan that they would like to see.
所以即马恁看到有足侪少年囡仔拢是亲像安尼，因无亲像一寡是学政治的，对政治较有一寡狂热，会直接去参与政治活动。
So even though there are a lot of Taiwanese young people that are not so passionate about politics in general, what I just described are the ways that they get themselves involved in the Taiwanese community.
因只是关心台湾的方式是较无相像嘛，无亲像恁安尼讲，一定爱去看选举，啥物才叫做关心台湾，这是无共款的时代。
So the way that address issues, so the way that they care for Taiwan is not necessarily through political election participation in the ways that Taiwanese American like us or some of the more politically active Taiwanese in Taiwan are doing.
我 follow class 的话，我是感觉讲，台湾，讲到台湾爱用台湾话讲。
So because we're talking about Taiwan, I have to speak in Taiwanese.
我想迄美国伊逐个世代伊嘛是会感觉讲 ，OK， 这个世代因是要安怎为美国的社会做代志，然后台湾嘛是因无共款的世代因要为因社会嘛有无共款的方式来做，因感觉爱做的代志。
I think even in the United States, different generation of Americans felt that the way they should get involved in to engage politics in the U.S. are different. And same thing in Taiwan, different generation Taiwanese take their own approaches in addressing issues in Taiwan.
我是感觉讲政治这个 approach 就是伊是同一接的，这个权力是袂当放弃的，但是的确像 class 在讲的，也佫有其他做者其他的方式。
The being engaged in politics is one way of it's one of very important ways that's never going to go away. But there are many other ways you can engage the society.
然后共款你讲台湾对阮是啥物？我想讲做者Taiwanese American 伊嘛拢会问恁家己讲。台湾对恁是啥物，还是讲美国对恁是啥物？这是阮逐个人成长的过程中会去问家己的问题。
I think for a lot of Taiwanese, we do ask, what is Taiwan to us? Just as you as Taiwanese Americans ask yourself, what is Taiwan to you, and what is United States to you? See, this is part of the process of growing up.
然后尤其是咱的 generation 讲 globalization， 所以想讲阮定定对着日本的朋友还是啥物Korean 的朋友，我拢感觉家己其实做像的。
And because of globalization, when we actually meet our people in similar ages from Japan and Korea, we find a lot of similarities in the young people in Korea and Japan that we meet.
问家己讲台湾是啥物？台湾人，新台湾人，做侪人因对台湾人是啥物？佫有做侪无共款的解说。
So there is a phrase called the New Taiwanese or Taiwanese, and so a lot of different Taiwanese have a different understanding of what it means to have this Taiwanese identity to be a Taiwanese.
你讲要爱国，人讲有做侪无共款的国，有的人讲伊是台湾国，有人讲中华民国，有人讲伊是中国。
Yeah, even when we say you want to be patriotic to our country, people have different understanding of what the country is. Is it Taiwan, the Republic, or the Republic of China, or China?
所以有当时毋知影，找无迄个 answer 的时阵，你着坐公车，然后你公车你看出去看外口遐咧做代志的人，因着是为即个土地你做因感觉因爱做的代志。
So when we don't necessarily, even though we don't necessarily have the answers to that question, a lot of times when we walk in the street or we're taking the bus, when we see outside the people in Taiwan, they're doing stuff in Taiwan. They're just doing what they think is best for Taiwan.
对啊，然后你嘛迄个，就是因嘛无迄个能力讲 ，OK， 我要走，我要讲，我即摆感觉台湾做歹，我就离开。因嘛无迄个能力去做，因就是因的未来，台湾的未来是安怎，台湾的社会未来是安怎，因就是住伫迄个社会内底安尼。
And a lot of them don't have the ability to leave Taiwan. So whatever Taiwan's future, however Taiwan becomes in the future, that's the Taiwan they live in.
所以我对台湾人我嘛是感觉安尼，就是我反正以后台湾变怎样，我就是住伫迄个社会内底，我就是台湾人。
So I feel the same way. No matter where Taiwan is in the future, I'm Taiwanese. I'm gonna live in Taiwan, and that's a place I live. Do you guys want to jump on? I think Rob had your hand up, and then Bobby.
Well, I just wanted to say it sounds really good that some of you mentioned that the ways of engaging the youth have become more on a community service and volunteer, and that seems to indicate to me that the youth are more optimistic about Taiwan itself and wanting to make it a better place, and that the politics and the democratization has actually really taken root. Because one of the real indications of a vibrant democracy is the apathy of the people. That it doesn't really make a difference if we vote for this side or that side. It all roughly is the same. And so that kind of moderation of democracy happens. But the question I wanted to ask you was, given that, I just want to know, are you afraid of China?
I think both of them serve in the military, so.
Me too.
Oh, apparently you do. Are you guys afraid of China?
我是感觉讲无所谓会惊还是袂惊中国吼。我是感觉讲中国嘛是一个国，台湾嘛是一个国。只要咱好啊，甲因讲，用 peace and measures，咱的 CBMS 甲用好 CBMS right？ The confidence building measures。CBMS， 迄个互相信任的基础若建立起来吼，互相尊重，无啥物惊是毋惊。我是感觉就。
讲那么多，我放弃。I think that there is not an issue and I'm afraid of China. China is a country. We're also a country. If the best way to do it is to peaceful talks between the country, as long as the communication is established, there is not an issue of whether or not we should be afraid of China.
即摆咱咧讲的惊还是袂惊？我想你可能讲的是遐 missiles 吼，但是我是感觉即个 missiles 的物件，大家爱想清楚。400几粒、500几粒的 missiles， 伊绝对毋敢拍一粒过来台湾，因为对台湾来讲，对因来讲，伊不管是拍一粒还是拍500粒，对因来讲，因的损失会愈较大。只要在为 political science 遐 strategy 来想的话，因绝对是毋敢拍。
I think for me, if you're talking about the missile in Taiwan, it really doesn't matter if they fire one missile or 500. I think either way, the damage to them is going to be a lot greater. And if you just look at it from a political science perspective, that I don't think they'll fire the missile.
有一句话讲，做兵一年半，IQ 减一半，唔知你有听过？
There's a saying that you serve in the military for a year and a half, and then your IQ become half of what it was.
其实我感觉这唔是讲会惊袂惊的问题，而是讲咱台湾有啥物会用的筹码去甲因做 negotiation。
So this is not an issue whether or not we're afraid of China. Is what kind of power negotiating power that we have against China.
台湾人虽然是讲大家拢足惊死的，抑过真正若有发生代志的时候，我相信是足侪人拢会做阵起来抵抗的。
So even though there's a perception that all the Taiwanese are afraid to die, but you know, when something really happens, a lot of us will actually stand up and fight.
对，这甲世界每一个国家人大拢行是共款的道理。
And that I think that's true in almost every country in the world.
只是台湾人较习惯的是讲上尾的时间开始讲，伊要去做这样代志，也无爱做。
So, but I think it's true in Taiwanese, you know, unless necessary or at the last minute, unless it's until the last minute, they won't think about doing that kind of stuff.
当然，过去咱的媒体嘛一直讲是讲中国会拍过啊，台湾话一寡较老的话无，因过去的教育程度较无遐济先，因真正会认为讲中国会拍过来。
So, you know, when we hear from the media that, you know, how China's going to attack Taiwan soon, some of the older people who doesn't know who are not very educated will actually believe that, you know, that China will actually attack Taiwan.
就我的观点是无可能会拍，无可能中国无可能会拍过来台湾的。
My view is that China will not attack Taiwan. It's just not a realistic option.
因为我是支持讲台湾应该是用到国家尊严的角度去，不管是讲要安怎去做 negotiation 一部分，应该拢是较有尊严的去做这样代志。
So I think the most important thing is Taiwan should have enough self-respect to negotiate with China and to work things out that way.
因为这部分是，其实对我的观点是，民进党加国民党这边啊，不管因两边倒一边当选啊，其实对我经济政策啥物拢无差，有差的就是因对国家的尊严的看法较差的。
So you know, when we talk about this election, no matter which side get elected, either DPP or the Blue camp, the policies are not really that different. The difference is the perception of self-respect for our own country.
所以真正若要看，就是真正是看因两个政党对国家的看法、国家的尊严这部分。
So you know, when we actually look at the two parties, two sides, we look at how they view our country and what kind of respect that they believe in our own country.
所以我是感觉惊是会惊，因故若要相拍，共款会拍。
So my viewpoint is, yeah, if you ask me when I'm afraid, yes, maybe I'm afraid, but when all right, I'm just gonna build it. When shit hits the fan, we're gonna fight anyway. Okay. But I'm gonna just ask a really quick question. I think this is interesting because when you were talking about the young people's how young people view this election, at the first you say national identity is not an issue. From talking with you, first I thought wow, they solved for the young people they solved the national identity issue, but instead I think they just whether or not it's solved, it doesn't matter. It becomes irrelevant almost to say, well, even if you didn't solve that, let's talk about this other issue that more important. So is that how you feel where the some people are that let's not talk about identity, let's not talk about Taiwanese or Chinese or both. Let's talk about the things that that we care about, which are the social issues.
But does it depend on how you view it, like maybe like national identity or like the pride of being a Taiwanese? If that issue is not clarified, then it's hard to say that you're going to proceed smoothly in other social issues or like economic issues. So I think it's like it depends. Like I think many of my friends who like skip national identity and go directly into the policy issues that they think important, they hold that viewpoint that they can, without clarifying on national identity or without clarifying what it means to be a Taiwanese, they can, as long as the issues that they care about are taken care of, then it's okay. But like from my perspective, like I think it's more fundamental. That question has to be clarified, or else you talk about Taiwanese culture, you're not able to talk about Taiwanese culture.
Max. Anybody else?
Going on what Robert here started as far as
In the U.S., everyone's heard of the right to bear arms, and it has significant issues in the U.S. when it comes to that. But I think lately, the U.S. citizens, they've taken the right to bear arms issue is not such an important issue anymore, given everything that we're facing. But in the perspective of the Taiwanese, it could have some substantial, how should I put this, implications as far as what defenses that the Taiwanese people could I guess muster. What I mean is, the right to bear arms has always given the U.S. the ability for its people to rise to the occasion if it came to it. My question is, has anyone in Taiwan ever thought about that as far as the Taiwan people itself? Having the local public see so much military training in the male population to talk about what about the right to bear arms to take up in case the situation ever came to it, in case something happens where the Taiwan itself, not only its military but its people, would need to defend itself.
他想问的是说，在美国，所有美国的宪法里面有一个说，美国人民应该有可以拥有枪支的权利。那他说，美国虽然这以前是一个蛮重要的一个问题，但是现在你们不是。那问说你们有没有对这个想过？说就这样，如果台湾真的要来防御自己的话，给人民枪支，你们有想过？
不是国家的武器，
不是个人，你就是不是说蔡奇亚，就是去枪店，就是美国有枪店，你进去，然后拿个执照就可以买枪这样子。你们想过这对台湾的防御有什么样的变化？你们有没有要回答？
我是针对你问题，我想，那到时阵台湾变安尼的话，咱会当想象，迄阵会变成，咱会变 Israel， 你敢知？台湾会变 Israel 甲 Palestine， 迄个民 civil power， 迄个型。我想 weapon 不是一个解决问题的方法啦。
I don't think that. Yeah, I think if it comes down to that, that Taiwan will fall into the state of Israel, where it's civil militants against civil militants, and I don't think that only weapons is the way to solve problems.
But soft power, yes. 咱第一讲甲一个野蛮的国家，一讲讲袂成，咱两讲讲，两讲讲袂成，咱三讲讲甲伊讲，一直讲伊就听会捌咱 human being 的意见，你敢知？就慢慢甲伊讲，有一讲伊会知。
I think if you are facing with a really a stubborn opponent, if you try to talk with them and one day it doesn't work, let's keep talking, and one day they will hear you.
即摆咱看到中国伊爱钱嘛，去遮爱钱，咱互伊钱。但是咱互伊钱的东西，咱拢互伊知影讲，啥哪要互伊钱，钱的作用伫啥物所在，慢慢甲伊教，甲伊教了，伊就慢慢入来咱即个较文明的世界呀。
I think that so for example, China is in need of foreign investment, and Taiwan has provided that. And in doing that, Taiwan has showed China how to utilize capitals, and the more that we engage in China in that way, the more China will be China will become closer to the more, I guess, our more civilized way of addressing problems. Somebody raised their hand. Huh? Bobby? And then who's it? I hear Charles? Okay.
I just wanted to address the issue that they were previously talking about. Kind of wanted to speak from a perspective of a Taiwanese. In the effort to save time, I'm not going to speak Taiwanese and have him translate. But they were talking about the different generations, them and their previous generations, and why the previous generation was more politically active and more active for social activism like feminine rights and so forth. I think a lot of times we often forget what Taiwan was like 17 years ago. It was completely different from what it's like today. I mean, Taiwan was under martial law, people's freedoms were being trampled on, and that gave way for student activism, and that's why people were more politically active in the past compared to today. And another angle we need to look at is Taiwan's a lot richer today than 17 years ago. So the young people, they want to enjoy their life. They want to, instead of being social activists, they just want to socialize. I mean, it's a big difference. And with her comments, she said that she finds that she's really similar with Japanese or Korean kids, and that's only because Taiwan has been under the invasion of J-pop and Korean drama. That's what people care. That's what they care about nowadays. So that's what I see to be a main difference between the current generation and the previous generation. The country's a lot richer. You have a lot more freedoms, and people just simply care for other stuff.
Charles, you have a question? Okay, we're gonna keep it. We only have because of the schedule for tonight. It's dinner with a very important officer from OCAC. We're gonna keep it pretty on time. So if you can keep your question short.
It's not really a question. I was just commenting on what one of you said about worrying about being like independent and not over the smaller issues. I think it's actually could work out if you brought up the smaller issues in Taiwan instead of concentrate on who we are and like if we want to be independent or not, because whenever we do accomplish on agreeing on an issue, it will define who we are and what we believe in. And if we keep building on it, we won't even have to ask who we are in the future. We already have established it.
Well, okay. I'm not sure. I have one question that we need to jump in, but it's it's totally, because I think it's the area that needs to be covered. So if you guys, we'll try to figure out a way for you to continue to interact with them. But I just want to make this a last question, which is there was an issue about our moderator. The issue of the people talk about Taiwanese the Taiwanese young people have a hard time thinking for themselves, and and a lot of what they see are on the media. Just so what's the power of media? What's the influence of media on Taiwanese young people's culture? And also, are you guys looking to others from the media like the internet for your sources rather than just what you see on TV? And this is it, very quick. 你们就是台湾的媒体对你们影响，然后你们除了传统媒体外，还有没有经过其他的媒体来跟这些进行推荐？
实在是不想讲台湾的媒体。
为什么不想讲台湾的媒体？你们对媒体的那个看法是怎么样？
I think it's really bad. I feel like so because I didn't really study anything about politics because what I learned was decided since I was in senior high school. So the only course I have taken about politics is the basic principles of politics. And but even that was a very basic one. It helped me a lot. After taking those courses, that course, I started to realize how bad the media was in Taiwan, because they, for example, when you, I don't know how many of them have been watching news on television, but they have a lot of adjectives on everything. I mean, they don't just describe something, but they were like telling a story and they make a lot of comments. Some of them are really ridiculous. So yeah.
Why is it ridiculous though?
Ridiculous, not rationally, but it's like they're making fun of some of them. That's why I think it is ridiculous. But I don't think news should be reported that way.
But why?
You mean why are they ridiculous, or why do I think? Why do I think
why
they
are
are?
they ridiculous?
I don't know. I don't know why are they ridiculous.
你是国民党控制啊，你也不讲。
原来是安尼，我第一波抓到今天的中心思想。
I was wondering, I can ask the last question. Tom, into all of us and everybody here.
What is it?
I was wondering that, okay, as an observation group here, is there a message you want us to bring to the U.S. when we go back?
Yeah, and also same question, because we also want to bring your message to like a more like we wanted to bring more people here, but because of the seat, so we aren't able to do that. So we also like hope that there's a message from you guys as well. Yeah.
So
And, a message to who? To you guys? To the Taiwanese Americans?
Yes.
Well, to get to the public, the American public.
To us，你们希望我们带回美国，因为不是this is not all the Taiwanese Americans here, so what do you want to
There's an easier one and a more difficult one. So the easier one is Taiwan is a very good place to visit. People here are friendly. We don't speak that much English, but really people here are very friendly, especially to guests. So come here to visit us. That's the message I bring to every foreigners. And the second one is like more serious. Is like though there are a lot of conflicts, a lot of problems now in Taiwan, but I still believe that a lot of Taiwanese people are fighting very hard for themselves and for things that they think are right. So yeah, that's a very simple message.
do that?
那我是感觉会当加用一寡时间吼，真正是加，不管你是做 homestay 还是为去参加一个 foundation 还是什么，加留一寡時間，真正是較深入的去看台灣的這個社會。
I hope that you spend more time, no matter doing either meeting with foundations or homestay, you get to know and learn about Taiwan on a deeper level, and that's why.
莫甲台灣敢若當作是一個你敢若想要佚佗時，較來遮的一個國家啦。
So don't just think of Taiwan as the only place you go visit when you're trying to have fun.
媒體部有人安尼講啊，你若感覺你對台灣無信心的時陣，你一禮拜莫看電視。
If as far as media, say if you feel like you have no faith in Taiwan, just stop watching TV for a week.
佇台灣的媒體就是你若有錢，就當去請因去做一寡代志的。我感覺看迄攏是無正確的。
And I think that the media can often be bought by money in Taiwan, and that's not a very correct way of doing things.
啊，少年囡仔是拢會用一寡 internet 還是 BBS， 尤其是佇大學的時陣，攏是用 BBS 用的比 internet 更較濟啊。
And in Taiwan, as far as the young people, a lot of them uses the internet or the electronic bulletin boards, especially if they're in school, and that's a very effective way for them to communicate.
因為佇 BBS 內底是無講政治的。
But oftentimes, when they talk about in the electronic bulletin boards, are not related to politics.
所以，若是講要互因會去加關心台灣的一寡代志的時陣，就愛用無共款的包裝方式，就去甲因講。我唔管這方式是啥物，就是或者就是無講政治就對啊。
And I think that if you want to talk about issues in Taiwan, I think you probably need a little different packaging, less political color in maybe less political color in the packaging of the issues. As far as our message to you guys, I guess since we're talking to you guys, we'll say in Mandarin and then somebody can translate. 我是希望在台湾的青少年能够多有机会跟教导我们在美国长大或者在美国长大的台湾青少年，让我们了解到你们热爱台湾的那种情节，因为我们在外面这里，虽然我们很喜欢台湾，虽然我们对台湾认同感很强，但是真正来讲的话，我们不是住在台湾的，我们能对台湾做的事情也不多，所以台湾是你们的地方，继续加油。
I need to translate that? Does everybody understand that?
Translate it yourself.
I told them pretty much, like Taiwanese Americans, we hope that they can teach us, what they love about the land and teach more about, Taiwan. And at the end, I say, at the end, even though we care about this land deeply and we're Taiwanese American, but we live in the United States, what we can do for Taiwan are limited because we don't live here, and, we wish them the best in shaping the future of Taiwan. So that's it. Okay. We really appreciate you coming to visit us. We'll try to get contact information from all of you, and then this dialogue can be carried on over, what's that, a BBS, the Yahoo group or something, so you can communicate with them. It's great to interact. We really have to get going because we're meeting with, I believe, the second person in the